anyone to tell me which prophet in the Quran or the Bible has learned from other prophets to know what God expects of him. And I challenge anyone to come up with one person in the Bible or Quran who has learned from a prophet to find out what God's plan for his life is. We know that God revealed himself to the prophets, and they learned what God's plan for them was. Now, which man studied the prophets and found out what God's plan for him was? They all had an intimate relationship with God over and above seeking to another man. No one in the Bible, no prophet of God, learned what his will for their lives were by listening and learning from men. Nobody learned from a man, flesh and blood. They learned from God. The one thing we can agree on is God is alive. Call him Allah, call him whatever you want. That's not important. It's when he calls you that's important. And he called the prophets in the Bible. And the only difference between the prophets and us is they heard and obeyed God. No other religion can boast what we can because we serve a God who is alive. Because he is alive, why would we go to another man to search what he has for us? What's more important to a blind man? What is more important to a blind man, that he conquers the world or preaches what other prophets said? Or when his eyes are opened when he hears the voice of God and his spirit is opened and enlightened? What's more important to a crippled man? That he conquer the world for another prophet or in another prophet's name for the glory of God? Or that he studied the prophets and get doctrines and commands and traditions of men? Or be made whole because he heard and obeyed the voice of God? The only thing that differentiates other religions than the religion that serves a living God is that we can go to him. So why are we going to dead prophets? Whether his name is Peter, James, or Paul, or Muhammad. That's my question. No disrespect. But when God opened up my eyes, he opened up my eyes to what I never would have conceived of. Because since I was a child, if you wanted to know about God, you went to another man who knew and had more knowledge than you did or I did, and we went to him to learn from him what the truth of God for our life was. That's called tradition. No other prophet had done it. No other man seeking God's will like Moses, Jeremiah, call him Prophet Muhammad, call him Peter, James. They all had one thing in common, and that's they heard the voice of God. So again, why are we following dead prophets? No disrespect. I'm not saying they didn't fulfill God's plan for their life. That's their responsibility to God. But God has commanded his people. When he commanded Moses, he commanded Joshua differently, didn't he? When he commanded Abraham, he commanded Joshua, Elijah differently. So why are we following dead prophets when there's a living God who wants to talk to us, reveal his plan to us? And I guarantee you, your plan is going to be different than any other prophet in the Bible. The difference is they heard the voice of God and obeyed, and we're seeking dead people. We're interpreting what God spoke to dead people. Why?